way, what good does a promise of a Senate vote even do for you, Democrats? You don't control the Senate. Do you even know how this works?
Many people were surprised to hear criticism like this coming from Jon Stewart, who has long been associated with Democratic viewpoints. Yet this time, he spoke openly without softening his remarks. So what prompted such a strong reaction from him? Let's examine the events and explore the arguments that shaped his perspective.
By the way, tonight's show will be brought to you by I Can't F***ing Believe It!
Before negotiations changed course, Democratic leaders repeatedly promised they would stand firm and resist Republican demands. Reports suggested that Senator Chuck Schumer expressed confidence that they would not back down under pressure. Those statements energized many supporters and created the impression that the party was prepared for a prolonged political battle. However, as events unfolded, that determination appeared to fade. What had been presented as unwavering resistance ultimately looked to many observers like a significant retreat from earlier commitments.
What, you ask, is it? Well, it is the Democrats. You remember the Democrats. They shut down the government last month.
Stewart appeared genuinely surprised by how quickly Democratic leaders abandoned the firm position they had emphasized only days before. He suggested that the shift seemed inconsistent with the strong public statements that had preceded it. To some commentators, the contrast illustrated a familiar political pattern in which bold rhetoric is followed by compromise once difficult negotiations begin. The episode became another example of the tension between campaign messaging and the practical realities of governing when major decisions must be made.
Charles Schumer's 3 words were no match for these 5 other words.
Democrats cave on the shutdown.
Excuse me? Cave on the shutdown? Hello?
Stewart directed particular criticism towards Senator Schumer, contrasting his earlier promises of determined resistance with the outcome that eventually emerged. He argued that the dramatic language used before negotiations did not match the final result. According to Stewart, the episode demonstrated how political leaders sometimes present themselves as uncompromising during public debates, but later accept outcomes that appear inconsistent with those earlier declarations. The contrast became one of the central themes of his criticism.
This forceful, young, authentic Democratic Party that hangs out down by the river and curses in what appears to be a cerulean blue blazer.
According to Stewart's analysis, Democrats ultimately did not secure the health care provisions that had been presented as one of the primary reasons for taking such a firm negotiating position. Instead, they received what critics described as only a general commitment that the issue might be revisited in the future. No specific guarantees or timetable accompanied that promise. For those who expected substantial policy gains, the outcome appeared disappointing and raised questions about the effectiveness of the strategy that had been pursued.
Democratic senators voted with their Republican counterparts to end the shutdown and reopen the government. And did they get their extended health care subsidy?
Stewart also argued that Democrats entered the negotiations with several political advantages, including favorable public opinion and a number of recent electoral successes. Given those circumstances, he suggested that many supporters expected the party to negotiate from a position of confidence rather than retreat at the first signs of resistance. Instead, he believed they surrendered much of their leverage without obtaining meaningful concessions, leaving many voters questioning whether opportunities had been unnecessarily lost.
I believe it! You had the wind at your back. Election victories all over the country. The new Sydney Sweeney movie, box office bupkis.
Throughout his commentary, Stewart expressed disbelief at what he viewed as a missed political opportunity. He questioned why a party that seemed to possess leverage and public backing would end negotiations without achieving many of its stated goals. In his view, expectations had been raised considerably before the confrontation began, Yet the final outcome produced few tangible accomplishments. That contrast became one of the most striking aspects of his overall criticism and generated considerable discussion among viewers.
You sold out the entire shutdown not to get what you wanted, but for a promise to not get what you wanted later. Where in the art of war?
Many political observers also questioned the strategy behind the Democrats' decisions, arguing that the outcome seemed difficult to reconcile with the advantages they initially possessed. Some critics suggested that the party appeared increasingly focused on public messaging rather than sustained political confrontation. Others warned that unless Democratic leaders demonstrate greater consistency and determination in future negotiations, they may struggle to maintain voter confidence as the next election cycle approaches.
Sun Tzu said, never press your advantage. It's unseemly.
The situation appeared particularly difficult for Democrats because they did not control the Senate outright, limiting their ability to shape final legislative outcomes. Some analysts argued that future debates surrounding the Affordable Care Act could once again place Republicans in a stronger negotiating position. They also suggested that the party's willingness to compromise relatively quickly reflected lingering political challenges following recent election setbacks, raising broader questions about confidence, strategy, and long-term planning.
By the way, what good does a promise of a Senate vote even do for you, Democrats? You don't control the Senate. Do you even know how this works?
Stewart continued to criticize what he regarded as a significant political setback for his own side. He argued that a party which had promised to defend its priorities with determination ultimately accepted a much weaker outcome than many supporters expected. While his observations were delivered with humor, he emphasized that the broader political consequences could be meaningful. Republicans, he suggested, now faced less organized resistance and therefore enjoyed a more favorable environment for advancing their legislative priorities.
Just say, for schnicks, that you managed to win a vote in the Senate, which you haven't done all year. Do you know what happens then? Hold on 1 second. Give me the thing. I want to show you. I'm just a bill.
Another point Stewart emphasized was that even if Democrats had maintained their negotiating position for a longer period or secured additional concessions, any final legislation would still need to move through the House of Representatives, where they lacked majority control. That institutional reality significantly limited their bargaining power. According to Stewart, this demonstrated that their overall position remained far weaker than many public statements had suggested during the earlier stages of the dispute.
Let's just say, you pass a bill out of the Senate that you don't control as Democrats. Guess what happens then?
Now I go to the House of Representatives and they vote on it.
Stewart concluded by noting that even after passing both chambers of Congress, any legislation would still require presidential approval. With Donald Trump occupying the White House, he argued that Democrats faced enormous obstacles regardless of the outcome of congressional negotiations. From his perspective, accepting a compromise without obtaining major policy victories appeared strategically questionable. His overall assessment suggested that the party misjudged both its leverage and the political realities surrounding the legislative process.